You're listening to Japanese Baptist Church in Seattle, Washington.
So welcome to JBC Connect. This is another episode, and I'm very excited about this episode because we have a special guest here today. It's May Kytonen, who is a wonderful artist and friend, and she's been a part of our community for the last while. And I wanted to interview her because I wanted to do this actually for a long time, even before the coronavirus stuff happened. But I want to do this because she's done this beautiful artwork in our narthex, and it's still there right now. And I thought it'd be fun to talk about May, the artist, May, the person, and then to talk a bit about her art, and maybe, hopefully we can talk a bit too about like what it's like being a creative in this strange time as well. So let's dive into it. So May, maybe to start off, do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me, and I feel very honored to get to share about myself and my work. So I'm a visual artist. I started maybe more seriously trying to pursue art a couple years post-college, and had a really supportive group of folks when we were living in Eastern Washington in Spokane who really encouraged me and challenged me and helped me grow as an artist. And so it feels like even to say I'm an artist now was like a community effort of like folks who were pouring into me. So I really feel like I owe it to a lot of friends and good people. But my work historically has been kind of an exploration and maybe even a wrestling with Asian American identity. And then also a celebration of that too. I think that even in wrestling, there's also celebration. So, yeah.
That's great. I mean, there's so much in that. Actually, I really like what you said about how you're kind of indebted to a community to become an artist. And I think that's really interesting. Do you want to talk a bit more about that? Like maybe how community has played into you in becoming an artist?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think with a lot of callings, it really takes a community to support you and encourage you and even help make space for you to step into that. So I'm thinking the very first community that did that for me was actually on Instagram, and I joined this group called The Weaving Kind, and they would put out little fiber art weaving challenges and then highlight folks. And that was really that was like the first time I ever shared work in any public kind of manner. So that felt like a big step at the time and was really encouraging. And then after that, it was a combination of my church community in Spokane with Communitas and also just the local Spokane artists that would kind of cheer me on. Like we all would share both the work that we were doing currently, and then when we saw calls for work or gallery openings or whatever else, we were just really supportive of each other in that. And then my church too tried to give us space to work and to think about how we could allow the arts to intersect with the life of the church. So I feel really blessed to have had space and people that cared and saw me in that.
That's really great. I think the way you're talking about it just made me realize like a lot of like intrinsically art is communal, right? And it just makes a lot of sense that you can't become an artist on your own. I think sometimes we talk about the artist as like this like eccentric individual, like sequestered away doing art on their own. But like actually art doesn't really flourish like in isolation. Like art really it's like empowered by people, and it actually only like flourishes through a community behind it and supporting it. And so I think it's really cool like you framed it that way, because I'm sure it's been said before, but I think it's cool that you said like it's not even the art itself that is being consumed, but it's just even the process of like forming your identity as an artist. Like it needs people, and you got like a lot of really cool support networks. And it's cool you talked about it wasn't just like a traditional circle, like it was also technology, social media.
I had a very eclectic mix of people in my life, my creative life.
Uh-huh. That's really cool. So then, I guess that kind of brings you to, then it's kind of a nice segue to talk about the other really big thing you talked about was like identity as an
Mm-hmm.
Asian American, wrestling. What is that or what isn't that? An Asian American creative. I think that's kind of an interesting category too, because we have that weird stigma about being a creative in Asian America. I don't know if you had that problem, but for me growing up in Asian American culture, sometimes they talk about how like art is this kind of refined thing, but at the same time they say like don't do it because it doesn't make money. Like I got that narrative in my background, but yeah. Tell us a bit about this like kind of pursuit and like where it's taking you and what things you kind of found on the way.
Yeah. So, where should I start? I think when I think about art, there's a lot that's basically storytelling. And when I think about story, I both think about my own and then again, kind of like that collective story of where do I belong in the bigger picture. And as someone who was raised in a blended ethnicity family, I guess. So my dad's white and my mom is from Taiwan. I felt a lot of just confusion in my story, and I didn't grow up in a lot of Asian American spaces, so I didn't know that a lot of my story actually reflected that of just the Asian American experience of feeling caught between one's family of heritage, or cultural heritage, or even personally, you might have come from a different country and then are also trying to hold this like American identity. And so kind of along that, I think when we think about story in the arts, whether that's in media or in music or in the visual arts, I struggled growing up seeing representation or hearing or seeing my story anywhere else. And there's more, there's definitely more than there ever has been, but still to say, like, I think I felt like the space of, and an invitation really from God to step into both exploring my story and making space for hopefully other people to be seen in their story, and really was a longing to bridge the gap that I felt between cultures for me in that. People might have different approaches to how they tackle or navigate that space, but for me it was wanting to like bring pieces together.
That's really great because like I'm thinking about my experience as you're talking about that too. Like I grew up in like a predominantly white kind of community going to school, but then on the weekend like it'd be a Korean church, and I kind of learned very quickly about this bicultural thing of like when you're here, they act a certain way. They won't understand certain things about you, so don't talk about yourself in this way. And then when you go to this other one, they'll know you in this way, but they don't probably know the side that you show at school kind of thing, right? So like this kind of bicultural thing, and it being like the second generation, the generation my parents were born in Korea and they immigrated. You get this weird two worlds kind of thing. And I think that's really cool what you're talking about too, because how empowering would it be, right? Someone who's bicultural like you, like a young person who's trying to navigate like, who am I? And then to come across your work, just like, wow, even if you're not intentionally saying like, this is for you, just the fact that you're exploring it, just to find someone else who's exploring the same questions, I think is really comforting, right?
I hope so. I've had throughout the years, a couple folks reach out to me after seeing my work, and we've had really conversations for me that have been super, kind of spurred me on to continue in my calling, because they've shared that they felt seen, or that it really helped, maybe not put to words, maybe put to visuals, the thing that they had longed for, or the attention that they feel. And that's really, that helps me, because it's, again, that community piece of like, I'm not just off on my own wrestling, like there's other people like me, and same for them too.
That's awesome. So funny thing is that we're both going to a church called Japanese Baptist Church. Neither of us are Japanese. And I'm pastoring this group of people, and what you're just talking about right now is something that I really have a hope for. Is that
Hmm.
JBC started with a very particular um, ethnic cultural
Mm-hmm.
origin, but it's really kind of like, I don't know, diversified. It's really grown, and I think that's something really special that's happened really organically over like 121 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're talking about is something that I'd really like to see more of happening at JBC. Is that um, because it's for all these years it's been wrestling with this idea of like identity,
Mm-hmm.
race, and culture, and then I think it's a great place for other people who want to explore that, just like yourself. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what you're talking about is definitely something I want people to be doing, and the fact that you know we're both talking on a JBC podcast, but we're not of this Japanese descent. But somehow this kind of funny tiny building has been like our intersection point, right? To
Mm-hmm.
share stories, and that's kind of what I would love to see happening. So like what you're talking about and the work that you're doing is so much about of like what I would like to see JBC do. So I'm so excited that you're doing that kind of work
Mm-hmm.
and that you're meeting these kind of people. Which brings me to we're super selfish because just to tell a story about May does amazing work. But I remember the first time I saw your work, I was so struck by it. It has this like, I think it has this like awesome like character to it already. Like relatively speaking, you're a younger artist, but I feel like you have this great voice already that's developed, and it's just really elegant and beautiful. And I was really struck when I first met it, and when I first came across it. And then I went to the Cascadia Ordo conference. No, what was it called then? It was
Sacrament and Story.
Sacrament and Story. Yes, the
Mm-hmm.
Cascadia Sacrament and Story conference, and I came into the main hall and your artwork was hanging from the ceiling, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. And I remember I just got this real visceral, like kind of emotional response, like
Mm-hmm.
this has totally changed the room. And months later, you joined our congregation because your husband was like a resident artist at our church, and I kind of just christened you like our honorary artist on this. I just kind of roped you in, and I never forgot about that artwork. And I was thinking like, oh, it would be so amazing if we could have this in the narthex, because I was also thinking when I saw that image, it's like it would be so perfect for Advent because of the themes I was thinking of. And I have to admit, like once you agreed to do that, and you're really excited to do it, and I was really happy you're excited. I remember when I came into church the day after you put it up, I was like, this is amazing. And I still can't take it down. I don't know. I might just steal it from you. I'm not sure. We'll talk about this later. But anyways, it's still up even now in the building right now. And for those who are watching on video, I'm going to be putting in some like images of the artwork for you to see, which is amazing. But that's just kind of the story I want to just tell our listeners about how we have one of your installations in our narthex, and it's amazing. So tell us a bit about this piece and kind of like the life it's kind of taken on. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy that it has a temporary or permanent home at JBC because prior to that, it was created for a one-day event that you mentioned, the conference from Cascadia. And after that, it just stayed in rolls under my bed, which is kind of sad for art in general. Like we were talking about community, and then to make something for a community, and then which it had a time and space to exist, and then have it then be under the bed in storage. So I felt really honored.
And actually, talking about time and space, like what's the name of the art
yeah,
piece?
In the fabric of space and time. So yeah, so having it under the bed was kind of sad, but I felt really excited and honored to get to share it with JBC and the NorthX. And the concept behind it, because a conference theme was Sacrament and Story, I was thinking about the I keep talking about story, but there's like our individual stories, and then there's like the bigger story of who we are in relation to creation and the creator. And I started thinking about the stars because they've been kind of a visual map or representation of the ways that culture have wanted to understand the bigger story of where they fit in the world and where they fit in God's story. And wanting to honor the people who have come before us and their quest to seek the creator in whatever form that might have taken. And I was inspired by this other book that was called The Gospel in the Stars, and it was talking about kind of God's story that is woven in all of creation, not just the stars, but that you can, creatively pull out threads of what God has done in that. And so I wanted to make a piece in this. The one day event was kind of in this like, it didn't have any window. It's a really nice event space, but it doesn't have any windows.
Yeah, that's right.
So thinking about how do you bring kind of the stars into a kind of dark space.
Yeah.
And then I used the wax resist dyeing process where I drew the constellations out on these banners and then dip dyed them. And then the thing with wax resist dye is that when you dye them where the wax is, it resists the dye, and then it stays the color of the fabric, and the pattern is visible on both sides, and then when there's light you can kind of see the light shining through, which I also really liked. So
no, I mean it's really striking, and it's interesting, right? Like I was a East Asian Studies major, so so when you talk about all these kind of things like Asian identity or culture, like it's really interesting to me as well. And that's actually that was my whole attraction to study about Japanese history and culture. And I lived there for 2 years. And then of course I have my own, Korean Canadian background. But, I thought it was really interesting about this piece though. It's like, it's not like this overt thing, but this theme of like honoring our ancestors, right? Is such a key value, I feel like, in Confucian like influenced cultures. And like connecting ourselves to our past. There's such a rich tradition in all the Asian cultures to varying degrees about like reconnecting, right? Like it's like this is something we really got to preserve. And I think just that whole act of like making this physical document of like recognizing like these are the stars that we watch, but it's also stars that our ancestors watched. Like it really resonates to me, and it just came out really naturally. I think that's really cool.
I'm glad that came through.
Yeah, and why I was really struck by it and wanted to use it for Advent was because the theme for Advent this past year was loosely kind of like when we are lost, we can be found by God. So like I wanted this kind of sense of like God finding us. And I thought like, wow, this is really cool that the stars are like navigating and like leading us home in a way, because like that's what people would do. And so it just felt really natural. And that was like the theme I extended into Lent, which is why I thought like it'd be great to keep this for the next season. And I can't help but feel now, like in this weird time of quarantine, it's like I've come into the building now. I'm trying to come just like once a week or so, just to see how the building's doing. And it's just really comforting to see your piece up there in the narthex. It's like this centering, like guiding thing that just kind of reminds me like, well, we'll get through this. Like this is going to lead us through.
Wow.
So it just means a lot for me to have that
very
there.
Kind.
Yeah. It's just, it's a very special piece. So tell us a bit about like how you feel about it now, because like it's weird, right? Like it's been a long time since you made it, and it was a very different kind of thing. So like how do you feel about this artwork over time?
Well, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with all the work that I make.
Right.
So pretty much after I make a work, I no longer like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I just get really self-critical. But I
Mm.
think the thing that has maybe been helpful about having it up at JBC is almost like desensitize that critical eye for myself.
Mm.
Maybe it's been healing in that way of having it continue to be enjoyed by others. And then I'm kind of getting numbed to the self-criticism voice that normally if I have a work and I see it and then it goes away and then I see it again, I'm like, I see all the things I messed up. The other interesting thing with it is that it spurred another body of work that I'm working on now.
Oh.
So I'm doing a couple of installations. One is for an Amazon building in Seattle through Shunpike, and another one's for the city of Auburn. And they are kind of like like sister banners to these ones. So these ones were based on the Western star map system that we have, I don't even know what you would label it because it's just what we know in the West of the constellations. But I was curious about the Eastern constellation charts and maps that might have been used before the one that we use now is being used. And so I've made a couple that reference different star charts from China. So there's some of their constellations, and then some like recordings of comets. And then there's also, they had a different way of splitting up the sky where it was based on the cardinal directions, and they had like guardians over each direction. So I have those visually represented. So it's kind of cool how this body of work kind of then created this like sister body of work that I hope that they can be kind of in relationship with each other in some way.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like I feel like so some people might not know, like I also like create and record music outside of church, and I have a similar thing too, is like I have a certain project and you just keep manipulating it, and it just kind of like you jump off at a certain point with it, but then it just keeps living, right? So like right now, like I'm recording this stuff and I'm like unearthing like these projects I had from like almost like 10 years ago. And I have like new perspectives, new equipment. And it's like, but those kind of foundational things that I kind of studied, quote unquote, through that previous thing, like it continues to live on. And so it's almost feeling like you never really finish a song. It's like you just keep making sound, right? And just see where it takes you. And I feel like that sounds a lot of like what you're describing, right? Like it's funny how, because like I haven't seen a lot of your work, but I tried to look at some of your work through your website.
It needs to get updated.
MayKytonen.com. Oh no,
it needs to get
great.
overhauled.
And I've been like, following through Instagram, and it's kind of neat, right? Like you can say that you have all these great like shows and like these projects, and congratulations on those 2 awesome ones. But it's neat how like I can almost see like how you like your past works are like kind of carrying forward, and it's like informing the next one. And so it's like I think that's kind of like freeing, because sometimes as an artist I get caught up in like commodity, I guess. Like I got to make a product and it's done, now I got to do a new one and a new one. It's like, well, you don't have, like taking that pressure off yourself. It's like, no, just like follow where it goes, and then you don't feel this kind of heavy thing of like, how am I going to create a whole new album or like a whole new like a show for a gallery or something. It's just like, just keep following where it goes. And it seems a little
like
more
a
like
thread
collaborative
that you follow through. That follows through. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. So then, what other projects are you working on? I feel like it's interesting is that you're super low key, but like you're actually very productive. I feel like you've been saying like, I'm not really doing much, like in some office. But I'm always like, oh, she just did another show. What? She just did this. What?
Yeah, I'm realizing that I'm maybe more secretive than I intend to be. Or I've also noticed with my art making process that I really like to, even though I've talked about community a lot, when it comes to my art, at least the process is like I want it to have an incubation period before it's like unleashed, and
Right.
almost can't have any input because it's so fragile until it's like
Yes.
almost ready.
Yes.
Some people don't work that way. Like they want feedback all along,
Yeah.
and that really helps them. But
Yeah.
no, that's basically it. Just some things, the installations. Like
Yeah.
I have ideas, but I
Uh-huh.
haven't been, they're still in the ideation phase, which is okay. Like I think
Yeah.
a couple years back, I used to put more pressure on myself or feel like I needed to be really prolific. And now
Mm-hmm.
I think I have more peace to say, even if something is an idea for 10 years, that's still part of art, like being an artist. If
Right.
I only have an idea and it doesn't become a thing for a long time, that
Right.
doesn't make me any less of an artist. Like I'm
Right.
kind of
Right.
okay with it doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, man, that's really great. I feel like that's kind of like a nice segue into like maybe the last thing we could kind of like talk about is what's it like been for you like creating, right? Like in this weird time. Because this is kind of something I've been really
Yeah.
fascinated with all my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, they're just talking about all that stuff about productivity and like that stuff is all being like kind of questioned and like turned upside down right now. So like, what's it like being a creative or like producing art in this time for you?
Mm. Well, I think if I hadn't had deadlines with those projects I mentioned earlier, I probably wouldn't be making very much because, to be honest, this
Mm,
time period has been really stressful for a variety of reasons. And I think
mm,
collectively as a society, and I mean globally, we're experiencing a lot of trauma. And
mm.
when you're going through trauma, you just need to be able to get through each day. Like it feels like, and maybe that's the piece too, when I was talking about, it's okay if something's just an idea for now, and like
Mm-hmm.
waiting until there's like a space that feels safe for me to be able to have room to create more freely and not be bogged down. But yeah, it's been a little bit challenging, but in some ways also having those deadlines has been helpful. Like having to meet those deadlines means that I have to make, and then when I'm making, actually it's been really good for me to like use my hands and kind of be out of my mind sometimes, or not, I'm not, well, out of my mind, but like not like stuck in my head, like using my body to like just be really present to what's in front of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a both and of like letting yourself be okay in this time, to recognize that it's really hard, even if you're not like, I was having a conversation with a friend where we were talking about like, regardless of what you're personally experiencing, you're part of a community. So the people that are impacted also impact you. Like if someone's going
Right.
through a hard thing, you're also walking with them through that. So it's not any less important than if you were going through it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's a lot of really good insight there. It's a strange time for sure. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's weird, like how so many things that we took for granted are being reassessed, and we just the things that were so simple before that we never thought about, we have to think about so many things now, and it's exhausting. But I think it's a great opportunity too to
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe to pause and to reset and to rethink the things that we took for granted, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, well, I feel like we could talk for hours. I was actually wondering, like, gosh, I hope I can fill up something decent, some good content. But um, I clearly underestimated how much awesome stuff you have. And I want to actually ask you about so much more. But I'm going to pause here because we need to save this for future episodes. So maybe we'll just have like a May Sam
Oh,
podcast. We'll just
that'd be
like
fun for
shoot the
me.
breeze. Yeah. And we'll just like invite whoever to come on. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. But I'm so thankful that you're able to join us for JBC Connect. And yeah, thank you again for just giving us your time. And we're really inspired and excited for what you're doing as an artist. And we're looking forward to what's next.
Thank you so much,
So
Pastor
thank you very
Sam.
much,
And
May.
I'm really grateful to JBC. Like this community has been so supportive and welcoming. And Daniel and I were just reflecting on how much of a blessing the community's been. So thank you to all of you guys too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, we will see you soon, and tune in next time for another episode of JBC Connect.